Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutam dhammam sangham namasami. Venerable Panyavati had invited me today to speak, and I was thinking about what to talk about, and what I've been working on is metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. Sometimes it's translated as goodwill, loving friendliness. And the reason for that has been that I had noticed over the years, the decades of being a meditator, how much anger and irritation would arise, and for me internally. And so I remember just being really distressed because, this concept of me as a Buddhist and a meditator and such, and how I thought that shouldn't be happening still after decades, and really trying to abandon it, trying different things. One thing that really helped was being in touch with my body and what harm, when these afflictive states came up, how harmful it was, or still is. But this is one thing that was really helpful for me. But another thing that's a mainstay for me is the practice of loving kindness. So when I was thinking about what to say about this practice, what was arising for me was the teaching that Sariputta gave, called the Great 40. It's in the Majjhima Nikaya. It's 117. I'll open to it here. But the Venerable Sariputta talks about how he describes what are the supports for samadhi in the sutta. And samma samadhi, or right, it may be translated as concentration most commonly, but it's also unification of mind, stillness of mind. There isn't really one good word that describes it. And the supports for samadhi are the other 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. And in this sutta, the reason why I started thinking about it in relation to metta bhavana is because Sariputta talks about how right view comes first. The understanding of right view comes first to support samadhi, and then right effort and right mindfulness. And all these things turn around or spin around, supporting the other factors of the path, each path factor. And that's where I was realizing when I was thinking about developing metta. Metta is also in the suttas often is referred to as either a prerequisite to entering jhana, or the absorptions, really deep states of concentration or samadhi, or it's a jhana itself. It could be a jhana itself. It's a unification of mind. It's a state of mind where all the harmful, afflictive emotions, the hindrances are all in abeyance. So when we develop loving kindness, these are real supports. So so this sutra was really coming alive to me when I started thinking about these three factors of right view, right effort, and right mindfulness in relationship to developing metta. And also each factor of the path is a support. I mean, they're all mutually supportive, but it's a support for developing loving friendliness, loving kindness. So I'd like to talk somewhat about the sutta and just kind of weave in the concept of developing loving kindness along with that. So the sutta says that right view comes first, and so our understanding of right view, or samaditthi, ditthi is can be translated view or understanding, but the Pali word ditthi actually does refer to sight, to seeing, and it's just kind of interesting that in English, when we talk about view or seeing, it does have to do with understanding. So it's an understanding through our experience by examining things. You could say exploring or examining and coming to an understanding that way. So right view is defined here in this particular sutta as knowing the difference between right view and wrong view is one thing, and also understanding what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. So that's really basic, foundational, right understanding. Also understanding karma, or the consequences of our actions. So this ties into the wholesome, the kusala and the akusala, the unwholesome. That it ties into these in that if we see clearly that our unwholesome actions through body, speech, and mind are harmful, then we will abandon them. And this is the right effort. And right mindfulness is really having that awareness and remembering to put these factors into action. So it says here, one makes an effort to abandon wrong view and enter upon right view. This is one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong view. Mindfully one enters upon and abides in right view. This is right mindfulness. Thus these three states run and circle around right view. So each path factor, all three of these are circling around, starting out with right view or right understanding. So when you think about developing loving kindness or metta or right view, goodwill, this is another, this is a wholesome mental state that we're developing. And so when we see the harm, like I was saying, of unwholesome states, then the metta, the loving kindness, can prevent us from entering into the unwholesome states. So we're really looking at cause and effect here, really looking at how these are all mutually supportive, and how really coming to deep understanding of these are supports to our path. So then he talks about right and wrong intention. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong intention as wrong intention and right intention as right intention. So, first of the three descriptions of right intention or right resolve. I think Ajahn Thanissaro uses the translation right resolve for this is sama sankappo. The right intention is the intention it's of renunciation, of non-cruelty and non-ill will. So abandoning the unwholesome factors. And here's the wholesome and the unwholesome, understanding these. What harm comes from, well, the opposite of renunciation is often said sensual desire, but you could think of it as greed. The extreme of that is greed. And what harm for ourselves and for others, how greed can be harmful to ourselves and others. And right intention as far as non-cruelty can be considered compassion, so developing compassion. And non-ill will is metta, actually. The opposite, the opposing factor to ill will is goodwill or metta. So developing loving kindness. Actually, I've heard of that. Loving kindness can counter greed, and if you think about it, where does generosity come from? Is a care and concern for other living beings. So acts of generosity, acts of kindness counters cruelty. So the metta can help counteract the three unwholesome resolves, or the three unwholesome intentions, to have right intention. So so we can examine in ourselves the motivation or intentions in our actions, and if they're coming from greed, or if they're coming from generosity, if they're coming from kindness, or they're coming from cruelty, if they're coming from goodwill or ill will. So we can really see how in our hearts what's arising, and with really seeing it clearly. This is the ditthi, the right view, seeing it clearly, then we're able to abandon. So this goes, abandon the unwholesome and develop the wholesome. So these two factors, the right view and right intention, these lead all of our actions in body and speech. But actually our thoughts are considered action too. This is part of the development of karma, is the thoughts, our thoughts. And what we think and ponder about will become the inclination of our mind, and then when our mind inclines in a particular way, then our speech and our actions are driven by that or guided by that, depending on whether it's afflictive or whether it's helpful or wholesome. This is one thing I wanted to say about, is the wholesome and unwholesome can be translated as skillful or unskillful, or it can be translated as harmful and helpful. So whatever resonates better for you, understanding this. But in one of the teachings by the Buddha, he said before he was fully awakened, he really examined his own mind, and he saw these unwholesome states arising. And he saw wholesome states arising, and he divided them into two parts. This is the two kinds of thought, or Dvaita Vitaka Sutta. And so even like years and years of meditation and the lifetimes and lifetimes of really being a bodhisattva and really working towards purifying himself, he still had unwholesome mental states coming up. So, so we can be forgiving of ourselves when we think, oh no, I've been meditating all these years. These unwholesome states are still coming up. So we have compassion for ourselves. We see it clearly, and then we know what to do, which is to abandon the unwholesome. And then also we take the wholesome states to help either drive out. There's a simile of the peg where the Buddha talks about like furniture used to be made and held together with pegs. So you take an old piece of furniture and the legs are kind of wobbly because the pegs are starting to rot and wear out. And then you pound with a brand new peg, you pound out the rotten peg. So this is the concept of replacing one, like the unwholesome, the unhelpful, the unskillful thoughts with the skillful ones, with the helpful ones, with the nourishing ones, the ones that nourish ourselves and nourish each other. So this is our right intention. Our right intention is to cultivate as much as we can these wholesome thoughts which help guide all our other actions through body, speech, and mind. So then he goes through speech and action, and it's a if we're cultivating loving kindness, then this should come out in our speech. It should be, we should protect ourselves and others from harmful speech. So the cultivation of loving kindness should guide the way we speak to one another. And the inner, also speech, there's inner speech. How do we speak to ourselves? Are we speaking to ourselves out of kindness? Are we speaking to ourselves harshly? Are we getting strong negative judgment towards ourselves? Or are we forgiving? So this inner speech is really important. If we're kind to ourselves, forgiving of ourselves, we can be like, what is it called? Firm. We can be firm with ourselves sometimes. We see ourselves acting or speaking or thinking in these same kind of ways, and sometimes we might just have to say to ourselves, well, this is going a little bit too far now. We need to really stop. And so I make a really firm resolve. I'm really going to work on abandoning this bad mental habit, or I'm really going to work on kindness in speech. We can be firm with ourselves, but in a kind way. So caring for ourselves comes first. This is really how the practice of loving kindness is taught often, is starting with oneself and then radiating outward. So the kind speech should start with ourselves, and then if we can be forgiving of ourselves and kind to ourselves, it's so much easier to be forgiving and kind to others. And also with action, how we are loving kindness should guide us in all our actions. So same as we don't want to really deprive ourselves of what we need, but we don't want to be greedy either. So there's this balance, the balance of mind, to really care for ourselves as well as others. One example I like to give is that when I was a nurse, and I was working with people who were on life support, and if I got sick, my patients could die from just a flu or a cold or something like that. They were on ventilators, and so I really had to make sure that I was well before I went to take care of anybody else. I didn't just take symptomatic relief and go into work, because I could still be contagious. So this is the thing, we really, and then if I'm not feeling well, I won't function well on the job. So really to be able to care for oneself is really important, and then we're able to care for others. So this is part of kindness, loving kindness towards oneself through action, through but just as in the teaching is like, just as we wish for happiness for ourselves, wish for well-being for ourselves, we also have that wish for others. So that wish starts in our heart, but then it should also motivate us to act out of compassion and caring for other people. So really looking deeply, I'm not different from anyone else in that way. We all beings, an ant wants to be safe. An ant cherishes its life. And an ant feels fear when it's threatened. So I can see that. You become more sensitive, and you see that even in the smallest living being. It's like, this should educate how we act in the world, not to harm any living being. This is why the Buddha talks about non-harming, the precept against harming other living creatures, against killing or harming other living creatures. And that should be motivated out of our loving kindness, out of care for other beings, just really knowing they're no different. I try to take a little ant outside very carefully, and it's frightened. It's really, but I'm trying to, for its safety, move it, And so I can really see that. I can really see the fear in beings that don't understand that I don't mean any harm to them. So I know they feel fear. I know they cherish their lives. So this should motivate us to, when we see this, when we see other living beings, or you see the happiness of the cat when we're like, give it some affection or food or something like this. This is like we can rejoice in the happiness of others. So this should just really motivate our actions, this loving kindness. And the development of this, as I was saying, does come from these three path factors of right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. These are supports for this developing of the metta. So we have right speech, right action, right livelihood. So you can also imagine how your livelihood, based on kindness, based on non-harming, this the right view of right livelihood would be also just on the side of the wholesome, abandoning the unwholesome, anything that would be harmful to any living creature, if that's possible. I mean, it's really difficult. This is one of the most difficult path factors for people, because we see the impact we have in the world, and it's really difficult to avoid any kind of harming. I mean, just living in a building like this, even. I mean, what does it take to maintain something like this? So we do the best we can. We really do the best we can, but we understand that there is an impact on other living beings. There's a lot of good work in the world around fair trade and ecology. And there's a lot of professions that do side on helping other people and helping the environment. But it's difficult not to have an impact. I mean, even the agriculture, even vegetarian food, it has an impact. There's a destruction of habitat, for instance, with farming, animal habitat. So we have to really do the best we can and do the least amount of harm we can with what we do in our lives as far as livelihood. And certainly honesty and as much as we can, avoiding cruelty is really a strong aim in this. So right effort is also a key factor, as I was saying earlier, and right effort really does surround part of the surrounding or circling factors of loving kindness, in that we will see the arising of obstructive thoughts, something that will obstruct our loving kindness, harmful thoughts, ill will, cruelty. And so we try to, the first aspect of right effort is to guard ourselves from these unwholesome states, and then abandoning them as quickly as possible. But then the fourth is to cultivate the wholesome. So there we are, back to the metabhavana, cultivating this wholesome state and bringing it to fulfillment. So there's liberation of mind through loving kindness, which one aspect is to be free from all hatred, free from ill will. This is like, if you can imagine a life just totally free from aversion, hatred, ill will, what freedom would that be of your heart? What joy would you have? That would just be, you could be completely free. So this is one aspect of the liberation of mind. So this is how, one way that is such a wholesome state, and something really the Buddha encouraged us to cultivate. And then, of course, right mindfulness as the support, leading us to the right concentration or right sama samadhi. I don't know, there's not such a good English word for samadhi. So this isn't the end. The samadhi, we usually talk about the Noble Eightfold Path, and it seems like samadhi is the last path factor. But in this sutta, it talks about 10. So we have right knowledge and right deliverance or liberation of mind. So this is where this can take us. Actually, metta is cited as one of the 10 doors to the deathless, or to nibbana. So the cultivation of loving kindness can bring us all the way to knowledge and deliverance. But with the support of the Noble Eightfold Path, leading to right knowledge and to deliverance. So this comes from. It's just not just like reciting words over and over again, or it's like a magic spell or something like this. It is through our work, through our examination of our own mind, seeing unwholesome states arising, seeing how these path factors all come together in supporting in this development, and then uh, it's just this samsara is this really we're dependent on other life forms for our very lives. I mean, even vegetables have a life. When growing vegetables, you're harming other living beings. It's really almost impossible not to do that, especially with agribusiness. It's got to do something to stop the what they consider pests. Uh, so just doing the best we can and understanding that this is part of what samsara is, how samsara keeps going, is that our lives are dependent on other living beings. And there's an interdependency, but I think also, dedication to this path, dedication to acts of kindness and generosity. It's not going to undo like the harm that gets done. And we live in a society that, I spent years of my life really trying to live very low on the food chain and low impact, and I rode a bicycle, and I tried to be as low impact as possible, but this society just keeps churning. And so what do? There's a few of us that were doing that, or still doing that, living in community like this, I think, is really powerful because, I think we can make a positive impact on the world. And, I don't really have a good, I wish I had an answer to that was really, I think or Venerable, did you have something you wanted to say? Well, we don't have any control over how other people behave, but yeah, that's very difficult situation, and just really caring for yourself and knowing, well, obviously, to me, I know that it's not any individual's fault that there's COVID, and to blame a whole race of people for bringing it. I mean, that's really, they're very confused state of mind. And I think we need to guard ourselves from hatred or anger in response to that, or blaming them, or thinking that, yeah. I just look at those people as very confused, and they are harming not only you. I know there is that harm from that kind of interaction that you might feel, but they're also harming themselves. The Buddha talks about when a person does something like that, it's like he's picking up hot coals with his bare hands and then throwing them at somebody else. So they might hit the other person or not, but for sure he or she is harming himself by picking up those hot coals. So we don't have to do that in response. We don't have to further harm ourselves in response to that. And sometimes just bringing loving kindness and care to ourselves, and knowing, oh, well, this person's confused, but I know that I didn't bring COVID to the, I know this, I didn't bring COVID to the country. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but oh dear, uh-huh. about calming your own mind. This is really what each one of us has more power over than other people's minds or how they behave. And you said your coworkers are understanding. I don't know if they can help you in the situation, but it's a very difficult situation. I couldn't really say how we can change others. The only thing is we can change ourselves, and that will come out towards how we react and respond to others. And I don't know if I'm really glad that you're able to come here and to have the love and support of those who are here, and what you can do to nurture yourself and care for yourself by coming here. This is really, I'm glad that that's an opportunity for you. I think I saw a mic going to Ayya or Venerable, and do you want to address this?
I do.
Yeah.
So, sorry, you may not have been able to hear on the internet the exchange. Were they able to hear? Okay. And so the sister was talking about since the advent of COVID-19, how things have changed for her in terms of her personal safety because she is not American, and that she's accused of bringing COVID-19 here, even in the hospital where she works. As the staff still appreciate her, but even some of the vitriol that she gets from patients. Talked about neighbors that she'd been with for living around for 15 years, and how suddenly they're bringing their dogs out when she comes outside, or they're throwing poop in her yard, slashing her tires. And so some of the worst behaviors arise when there's a time of great fear, and when you live in a place where there's not a great appreciation for self cultivation. And as advanced as we think we are, we are known by our actions. ultimately. So sometimes it's hard to understand this kind of life unless you've lived that kind of life. And some of us have not just lived it since COVID-19. It's been since we were born, since we came out of our mother's womb. And there's one, the Dhamma, that can help you to understand cause and connection. I mean, if we don't understand causality, we will be hurt and we will be wounded when there's untoward action initiated toward is a kind of inner development and inner resolve that's necessary to escape. Now, that's from the inner harm, the inner feelings. We can say we understand or recognize the ignorance mentally, but if we haven't done our own inner cultivation, we still will not be able to stand when these things happen to us. When we come to understand the 8 worldly winds and being able to accept both praise and blame, praise, and blame, then we will come to the place that we are uprooting self-harm. Now we only have to focus on the harm, the physical harm that comes from others. Sometimes, this involves. Okay, sometimes this involves changes that we have to make just for our own safety. Sometimes what's more important, my ownership of something or my life. Sometimes it just comes down to decisions that we have to make just to preserve our life. And unfortunately, in samsara, in this reality, that is a reality. But when we understand it, we don't take it so personally. We understand that is the uncultivated mind, and part of the defense that I have is understanding that ignorance and knowing how to put myself into a position, even if it means giving up something, so that I can be someplace else in a place of safety. And so these are the tough decisions that we might have to make. And it's not just personal. It's not just to me and my situation. There's whole groups of people, that have had to move for their safety, that have had to migrate, that have had to give up something, they had to flee for their lives, they had to, so if you look at all of this, our problem that is so overwhelming shrinks a bit. And there is some relief that I can use my faculties in a way to be a protection for me. And this comes, over time and to the degree that we work it. And when it's hard to do, or we're just beginning to do that, because we thought that was so important to keep, that was so important to have, we find like maybe that's not that important. And we can accept a loss. We can make a move. We can give up that thing that we liked so much and thought was so important. And sometimes life just comes down to that, because we're not going to be able to fix everybody. We're not going to be able to fix everything, and sometimes then we just have to make choices about what's the most important thing. And of course, life is, and maybe find other ways to do something. Like if I go in a store and there's incident after incident, that's a store I will avoid, even if I have to go across town to go to the other drugstore. There's ways that if we don't put all of our energy into our personal hurt, that we can find some ways to protect ourselves or find our ability to yield and give up something so that we can have safety, that we can encourage ourselves until times change or some other condition changes. I really appreciate your sharing this, because this is where we live. I mean, these are real things, and we can talk about what should be done, but actually doing these things are not easy to do, they're not easy to do. And that's why we have to build ourselves up on the Dhamma so that we have the strength to do the thing that we need to do so that we can live to play another day. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Yeah. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, and know that you're not alone in your suffering, because the whole world is suffering in one way or another.
Sorry. 15 years ago, I look more Middle East people because I don't have black gray hairs. It's all black hair and long hairs. That's when it come to 9/11, they accuse me as Islamic people. I've been hurt one time, but not this bad. And now the more I get older, and plus this cancer here, it drained my body. And I have to live this natural. And of course, I look more Chinese. Like I said, I can't help. But I don't know what Chinese look like. Each time I'm going outside, I just don't feel comfortable because of all of these things. And I try to understand what the Buddha Dharma teaching. But then at the same time, I am scared of going out. Because like I said, I go to the pharmacy, pick up my medicine, they spitting on me. They say, "You're Chinese, get out this place." And then I went to Walmart. They pushed the cart on me.
About some specific things that you can do to help better ensure your safety. But the first one is you don't have to go to that same pharmacy to get your medicine. Is what I'm saying. I mean, we're gonna and maybe there's somebody, maybe one person in your neighborhood or the people that you actually live with in your house that when you have to go out, there's a time you could go out when they are home that one could accompany you. We don't know if we don't ask. And so, if we capitulate and just totally give in, like there's no hope, there's no answer, then there'll be no change in our situation. And so the first thing is thinking that there is something that I can do to better protect myself. What could that be? Instead of there is nothing I can do, there's no hope and there's no answer. And so some of that requires a mind shift and knowing, it's wonderful that you started coming to the Sangha and that you're sharing. I mean, like, don't know, you don't know, but you're sharing, so perhaps there's something else. I mean, they even have medicine delivery now, or, there's different things, but we will talk. Just knowing that there are some actions we can take to protect ourselves, and also knowing that things do change. It's not a forever. Well, for some of us, it's not a forever situation. For others, it is a forever situation. But we've learned how to be with the situation. That's what I'm saying. We can't like just close our eyes and say, no, like this is not happening or why this is happening. There is a more proactive stance we can take, and sometimes it is to even be able to endure some suffering because it is here present. And so, thank you again for sharing.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think whatever little thing we're dealing with is so great, but it's important to hear some of other people sharing because it helps us knock off some of our foolishness around trivial things, doesn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad you felt safe enough to talk about struggles that you're having, and I really appreciate Venerable Panyawati's suggestions to you. You're definitely caring for your heart and bringing up all the inner strength you can, and reaching out to others for help. So this clock says 1:05, and I don't know if we need to end kind of promptly, or if there's a little leeway for time. Five more minutes? Does anybody else have something that they would like to share or ask? Something? Pardon me? So, was there something? Okay. So then we could just end with a heart of compassion, and just holding those who are suffering, particularly. I don't know if you want your name mentioned, but holding everyone who's suffering, especially from the harm of others, and knowing the pain that comes from that in our own hearts, and just having the motivation to act out of compassion and care for one another. So I appreciate all your attention and everyone's presence here.
May you be well. May you be peaceful and happy. May you be happy. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. May I be filled. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.